Hello, and welcome to Soul Play, where we explore the art of living with curiosity, connection, and creativity. I'm your host, Sarah Benlaw, and I'm so incredibly grateful you're here. Throughout my journey, I've crossed paths with remarkable individuals, guests who join us here to share their wisdom, stories, and practical insights. These inspiring voices are shaping a better world, offering perspectives and tools that my younger self would have loved to discover. Soul Play is more than just a podcast. It's an invitation for all of us to show up authentically, reclaim our power, and reconnect with the essence of who we truly are. Today's guest is Bernard Zylberberg. Bernard is an international couples counselor and relationship coach for singles and couples, guiding people towards more conscious and fulfilling relationships for the past decade. He is also a mediator for families and friends, as well as business partners and employees, offering conflict resolution, as well as teaching effective and connective communication skills. His mission is to help make life easier for people by cultivating more inner freedom and releasing the burden we carry from our wounding, our conditioning, and the culture we grew up in. In this expansive and heartfelt conversation, we explore the transformative power of nonviolent communication, the importance of shadow work in relationships, and how inner freedom unfolds when we take responsibility for our wounds. Bernard shares profound insights into triggers, healing cycles, and how to consciously clear the field between ourselves and those we love. If you're seeking deeper connection within yourself, in your relationships, or with the world around you, this episode's for you. Without further ado, I welcome Bernard Zylberberg. Bernard, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you.
Yes, it's so great to have you here. Such an honor. I've been really looking forward to having a chat with you. I first met you at a trauma awareness training here in Koh Phangan. You were speaking to nonviolent communication, which blew my mind at the time, and I'm really excited to get into that and everything that you're up to here on the island. So at the top of the set, I would have introduced you, but if you don't mind taking a moment to introduce yourself and let us know why you're here.
Hi. So, I'm here. I'm assuming you're talking in general, right? Why am I here on this planet?
You got it.
I was thinking about that. You know, when I was a kid, I wasn't free at all. I was at the mercy of everyone. You know, my life, my parents, school, everything, it just didn't make sense that this was even my life. And so the reason then that I was there was I was going to show them. I was going to be president of the world someday. You know, I was going to eventually prove to everybody that that I mattered. And then with time, of course, I realized that was a bit of a high achievement goal, and I didn't have that kind of drive, thank God. And so I started working on myself and doing life. And eventually I realized that the goal was to be more free, and not just to be free externally, but free inside. And so the more I've developed that, the more I've worked on myself, the more I've made my life easier. It's become sort of my purpose, my mission to do that and help others do that. And help others be more free, have more understanding about what gets in the way of their freedom and how to be more free. So I think that's kind of why I'm here now, is to share that with others and continue my journey, because I am nowhere near being fully free, but I'm just much freer than I ever was. And I see the path.
Nice. Developing a sense of inner freedom for yourself and then helping others.
Exactly.
Yeah. Wow. And I know one avenue for that seems like nonviolent communication, which I would love to get into. Can you tell our listeners, what is nonviolent communication? What does that look like?
So nonviolent communication was developed by Marshall Rosenberg back in the 70s, and it's a way to create connection. It's a way to use vulnerability to trigger empathy in the other person, so that they want to feel or want to be connected with me. They feel connected with me. So the way you do that is by expressing your feelings and your needs, as opposed to your thoughts and your ideas. So if you're late and I'm upset about it, I would say, hey, when you showed up 30 minutes after our agreed time, I was feeling sad, upset, confused, because I need respect. Can we talk about it? as opposed to, hey, when you're late, what's wrong with you? Don't you know that, it's not okay to be late, that, and whatever judgment and criticism I could throw at you, that will not create connection. So how do we speak in a way that will create that connection? So that model of making an observation, expressing our feelings, expressing our needs, and then making a request to get the needs met is the basic NVC model, nonviolent communication model. But there's a lot more to it, and we can talk about that.
Yeah, please. Yeah. My whole being kind of contracted with the second comment, right? Like almost like an attack. And I close so I don't feel open to receiving even what you're saying, even if I could decipher all the pain away from it to explore what you actually mean. It's just kind of like, no, I'm going to protect myself instead.
Yeah, you are. One of the saddest things that we do is that we do the thing that will give us the exact opposite result of what we want. I want connection from you, right? And instead of, opening myself up to get that connection from you, I criticize you for what you do. Is that going to make you closer to me? No, but that's what I ultimately want. My goal is not to criticize you in general. I mean, there may be some people out there that have that as a goal, but usually the goal is connection, is love, is feeling a sense of togetherness. But unfortunately, the way we speak, the way we express ourselves, the way we let our system go on automatic, it does the exact opposite.
Let's get into it. Why does this happen? How does this happen? I mean, experientially, obviously, I understand as a human, especially in intimate relationships, I feel like it arises more, families, partners, of course, acquaintances, they don't really see that side of you necessarily as much. Like, can we get into that? What's going on there?
Yeah, so I think a lot of that would be what people call shadow work, right? So understanding our shadow. We all have hidden parts of ourselves. And so they just come out on their own every once in a while when they're triggered in just the right way. So usually it's either wounding or trauma or conditioning or culture. One of those three will drive unconscious reactions. Unconscious, I'm not going to say responses, because a response to me is a chosen mode of addressing a situation. I respond. But when I react, I'm not choosing it. It just happens automatically. And then when that happens, we usually end up not creating the connection that we want.
Right. So our childhood, for instance, like the garden that we've been given into adolescence, right? Like influences from media, culture, religion, the environment around us just kind of shape us in a way that if we don't pause, I guess, and respond, then we react.
We react, yeah. We have these automatic responses. We live in a world of right and wrong. There's the right things and there's the wrong things. And that is such a not useful model.
Amen.
And it's amazing, and I believe me, I have plenty of right and wrongs in my life, things that I see as right or wrong. But when I catch it and I reframe it, then I go back to, okay, so there's nothing wrong with what they're doing. They just have a need that they're trying to fulfill. We all have needs that we're trying to fulfill. That's the basis of this nonviolent communication, is to figure out what our needs are and then make requests to get our needs met. There's an issue with that, and we can get that into it a little bit later as we go deeper into it. Because the original nonviolent communication is really an external process. Like, hey, you do something, I feel something, I need something, therefore I want you to do something different so I feel better. The resolution is external to me, right? If you figure out something over there, then I won't feel so bad, and now we have connection, which is fine. It's a great model. The problem is, why do I feel these things? Why do I need these things? Why am I putting that on you? And is it even fair that you're now supposed to then do something to meet my needs the way I need them met? Right? There's a whole other side to that. I call that doing the internal track. Right? What's internal to me that causes me to have this need for safety, freedom, connection, whatever the need is. So I have a saying that is, any need that you feel the need to mention is more than just a need. It's a wounded need. It's a need that arises out of your wounding or conditioning or culture. But it's not just a pure, normal, basic need. There's much more attached to it because of the way you were raised, because of the garden that you grew in.
Wow. Very complex, as I'm not surprised, right? There's so many layers to this. Yeah. Wow. And so, yeah, I think it takes accountability, right? This internal track. Like, we're looking inward rather than, hey, these are my needs, meet them, or get out. Almost an ultimatum, that first version.
Yeah, there is that implied blame. Even in pure, beautiful NVC, when you're late, I feel upset because I need respect. So please, can we talk about you not being late, or how are we going to deal with this lateness issue? I could just say, please don't be late. That is not a good NVC request, right? You want to make a request that's more connecting. So we'd be like, hey, can we talk about why, first of all, why you're late, and then, how do we then meet my need for respect when you have to figure out what's going on with you? So that's fine, that's great, but this need for respect, there's a lot more to it. And if I can own that and take responsibility for that, not only it'll help the connection, but it's also about me. I want to be free. I talked about this inner freedom, right? If my need for respect will only be met by changing all the people around me, so they stop doing all these things where I don't feel disrespected.
Good luck.
Exactly. It'll never end. So the common denominator is always me. And so if I can do something here about why disrespecting is such a big deal for me, so that doesn't mean that I let people walk all over me, but it means that I don't react when they do. I can just respond and say, hey, I noticed that this and that happened. Can we talk about it? It's not a big thing. I don't get angry. I don't get hurt. I don't feel shame. Whatever the big emotions are, they come out of a reaction of something that's already in my body. So the world is a mirror for what's already happening here.
Yes.
The idea being that nobody makes you feel anything. The people do things, life does things, and we feel them. But you're not making me feel sad. You're not making me feel angry. There's a way that people talk about NVC, or when people talk about feelings and they want to work with their feelings, they say, when you do this, it makes me feel that way. Trying to connect the dots so that we can work on it. But there's something that doesn't work with that, because the make me feel implies blame. It's you're responsible for me feeling that.
Yeah.
And my anger, it's in me. You didn't create it. You may be a mirror for it. You may be able to show it to me every once in a while by your actions, but you're not making me feel that. If you're late, I may feel angry. Somebody else might feel confused. Another person might feel relieved. Oh, good, I get extra time. But we all react differently to the same stimulus. Yeah. So you're not making us feel these things. You'd have to be pretty all-powerful to be able to generate these feelings in other people. You're just a mirror for whatever's already here.
A lot of nuances here. Yeah. So that internal tract is very important.
It's super important.
Yeah, and I mean, it sounds like maybe where the shadow work comes in, the exploration, the delving into, like doing the work, right? Yeah. Doing the soul play, soul work, whatever you want to call it.
Exactly. Yeah, playing with your soul, trying to understand what you're here to learn and to share with others. Yeah. One of the themes that I work with is your wound is your gift. So there's nothing wrong with the wounding. It's there. We all have it. We all have a different version of it. But can you use it to learn about yourself, to heal yourself, or go on a healing journey, and eventually then maybe share that with others? I imagine that what you're doing here right now is a reflection of that. Yeah. And the work that I do is a big reflection of that.
Absolutely. Just want to help people help themselves, right? And there's infinite ways of getting there. It's just what one works for you. Yeah. And
usually the one that works for you is the one that you've worked on the most to heal yourself, to get out of it, to grow. Some people it's trauma, some people it's art, some people it's music, some people it's ingenuity. Whatever it is, it's whatever you had to do to get yourself freed up. And then you become an expert at it in many ways often, and then you get to share that with others.
So yeah, very equally important, it sounds like. And from a timeline perspective, I'm also just curious. So it originated with more of the external track. When did it become obvious that the internal track needed to be introduced to this model?
So when I first came to Chiang Mai 7 years ago, I found a practice group, a nonviolent communication practice group. That was one of the first people I met. And so I joined the group and practiced with them. And the facilitator was very new to it. She just loved it a lot. She just wasn't very experienced. And I'd learned it maybe 6-7 years before that in America and had practiced it some. And so I started helping her with the facilitation, and eventually I took over the facilitation. And then it became a thing, just me doing this every week and helping people figure out the model, working with the model. And I also had a background in men's group, facilitating men's groups, and then counseling. I became a counselor along the way. So I was big into healing and wounding and freeing myself. And so as I worked with the model, I started seeing, there's always this implied blame. How do we deal with this implied blame? So at first the idea was to say, hey, when you do this, I feel really hurt, and I'm not blaming you for it. I just want you to know that that's what arises in me, and so I could use some support with whatever, and I would just make a request with really implying, letting them know that I'm not blaming you. This is just what's happening here. But working with that, I started realizing, but still, there's more that can be done with that. Mm-hmm. And so now, when I do the internal track and when I teach it, the idea is, hey, when you're late, I get really angry sometimes, or maybe yesterday I got really angry at you when you were late, and I now realize that was my stuff, and it's my wound, and it's my healing, and so I'm really sorry that I got angry with you. Sure, we can deal with you being late at some point, but first I want to own this part and try to figure out where that comes from. And maybe I know where it comes from, and I just need to just regulate and work with it. Maybe I don't know where it comes from, and now this is an opportunity for me to work with myself and go, okay, why do I get so angry when people are late? What is this about? And one of the ways that I realize is that the language that we use in NVC, we really don't use feeling language. But what's really tricky about it is that there's a lot of words that we think are feeling words that are not. Like, I feel disrespected. I feel blamed. I feel attacked. I feel ignored. None of those are feelings. They're actually an action that the other person is doing. Mm-hmm. And so that's fine. It's nothing wrong with that. We all use it. The problem is that it probably won't give you the connection you want. Because if I tell you that I feel disrespected by you,
walls come up on my end.
Yeah. Right? Because what do you mean? I'm not disrespecting you. You're the one who blah, blah, blah. But if I say, hey, I feel hurt because I need respect, at least I'm owning it. But if I can say, wow, I feel hurt because my wound for respect is getting triggered, and this has nothing to do with you, but I could certainly use your help to work through that. Now we're in it together. Right?
So much insight, right? That's the gold. It's like you're handing over a part of your heart.
Yes.
Right? I've done deep exploration on myself, and I've explored this, and I want to hand it to you, and that's how much I care about this relationship.
Exactly. And now we do this together, and the lateness, we'll figure it out. That's really not a big deal. The big deal is that I have this pain in me that's been there forever that still gets activated, and so I want a way to work that out so I can express it, feel it, and then work. Because if you're not late, that's a Band-Aid on my pain. We can have you not be late, great, and then I won't feel it in that moment, but that's just a Band-Aid. That's not healing this deep pain that's in me. We need to do this work. And so in relationship with a partner, to be able to do that with a partner is amazing.
Absolutely. It sounds like triggers to a certain extent are a gift also.
They are.
Yeah, like challenging at the time. But again, I'm using that example of if my partner handed me that exploration and insight into her world, then of course I would hold that, exactly. Right? As opposed to this, I feel disrespected, which is okay. I understand. I've done it too. We all do, right? Taking accountability for being human. We're all learning. Yes. But it's I really appreciate that differentiation. Yeah.
And so those words, they're a direct pointer to your wound. Yeah. Whatever word you use. If you say, I feel disrespected a lot, you have a wound around respect. If you say, I feel attacked a lot, you probably have a wound around safety. Right? So whatever the word is really useful. It helps you understand, what's going on with you, and that's the beginning of the exploration of this internal track exploration. Wow,
what a gift indeed, yes. Right?
Yes.
Wow. And so how do you work with people that are coming to you, perhaps getting triggered recurrently and unable to really kind of break that? Because sometimes what happens are cycles, right? Repetitive cycles of going down the same track. Oh, I didn't mean to respond this way, but I got angry and the autopilot kicks in. Like, how do we break that cycle, for example?
It's not easy.
Big question.
There's no because, we are wired to react. The way we survive in this world is by reacting, not by responding, right? If a car comes, I don't sit there and go, how fast is the car going? Let me analyze this, figure it out. By the time I get it all figured out, I'm dead, right? So those of us who don't react are dead. I love saying that. That's like a great little...
and accurate, and give some compassion for why we're doing what we're doing, right? Because coming from a place of blame on ourselves, we're not going to get anywhere either, right? If we're like, oh, you did it again, you suck. Yes. Oh, you did it again, why? It's like, okay, come from a place of, I think, personal responsibility and forgiveness, compassion, and sit with it. It's painful sometimes, right, to be stuck in these repetitive patterns.
It is. It's what the Buddha called, don't suffer your suffering. or his version of that, right? Don't double down on your suffering. It's bad enough you break your leg. If now you get all messed up about, like I have a messed up shoulder right now, if I worry about it and blame myself for it or keep complaining about it, I'm doubling the suffering. It's not useful.
Buddha knows.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Buddha knows. So the idea is awareness. The first step is awareness, because you're going to react. That's for sure, right? And the reason we react so strongly, it's really useful in survival mode, right? In the physical world, we need to react really fast in order to survive. But in the emotional world, we don't. But we do. Why? Because there's a model called Internal Family Systems, IFS. And so the idea is that there's an internal family inside us of parts. We're made up of a lot of different parts. The way you might know this for yourself is sometimes you talk about my little girl or my little boy or my inner child. That would be one part. There's actually many. And so, pay attention to the people around you, to yourself. Sometimes you're really confident. Sometimes you're shy. Sometimes you're aggressive. Sometimes you're defensive. Sometimes you're really managerial and smart. Sometimes you can be a bit dumb and you don't understand things. So those are all different parts of you. And so when we're young, and it could happen anytime in our lives, but if there's a traumatic situation that we don't know how to respond to, that we don't have help with, that we don't get resolved, our psyche will create a part that figures out what to do with that situation. So if I'm 6 years old and my parents are yelling in the kitchen and I'm thinking it's about me and what did I do wrong and I don't know what to do, I'm going to run up to my room and I'm going to escape, but I'm going to escape in my head as well, and I'll go into some la-la land of fantasy, and that becomes my mode of dealing with that. Whenever there's tension or anger around me, I dissociate and I go off. So as an adult, I'm with my partner, they raise their voice, that part just takes over the wheel and starts driving the bus. And usually drives it right over the cliff because it does what's not needed. And so it'll dissociate. And then my partner's like, hey, I'm talking to you. What's going on? And you're just like not really responding. And it looks like you're there, but you're not. And that's one small example of that. But there's all these ways in that we go in these automatic reactions that are based on our different age. Could be 5, could be 10, could be 12, could be 20. The parts get created at any time when things are not resolved. And so those parts go in automatic reaction mode immediately. And so as an adult, then the idea is you're not going to avoid that, but how quickly can you catch it? Can you notice yourself going into reactivity? Some of us will catch it in a few seconds. Certain situations, when I'm driving in Koh Phangan here with all the crazy traffic, somebody cuts me over, I just go, hey, you mother, and I'm about to curse them, and then I catch myself, I go, okay, no reason. Give him a little bit of love and just let it go. Otherwise, I'd be angry all day long. It just is, I've learned to practice that and catch it. I still have the first reaction. I'm working on not having it. That's not happening yet. But I can catch it and let it go. But, something happens with a partner, a wound gets triggered, abandonment gets triggered. It might take an hour or two or whatever of anger or reactivity before I can come down and figure it out. So the goal is how quickly then do you go from reactivity back to your center. I call that catch and release. How quickly do you catch your stuck energy and release it?
What a gift, And it's like, taking that wheel and not going off the cliff, basically, right? What a beautiful metaphor analogy. It's incredible. I mean, bless these parts too, right? They served a purpose. They actually really felt like they needed to protect our nervous system, is my understanding, right?
Yes.
Like, okay, let's get in there, let's rescue.
Yes.
And a part of this process, this shadow work, this exploring our wounds, is developing a sense of compassion and understanding as to why they're there, and a holding and reparenting of those parts, right? Okay, I understand why you were there, not like, get out, you're not welcome here anymore, you're ruining my life again, right? Like language.
Not at all, yes.
And meeting them.
Yes.
Like, thank you for what you did. I am here and I can be present enough that hopefully I can create a new pathway, right?
Yeah, the idea, especially in IFS therapy, is to dialogue with those parts. First identify them, begin to dialogue with them, understand where they came from, what grew them, and then begin to let them know that whatever they were doing was great, thank you so much, not needed anymore. Right? I'm now an adult, I can handle this, but I can use that part. Sometimes it's useful. If I have a warrior part, and somebody makes a joke and I don't like the joke, punching them in the face, having my warrior come up and punching him is not useful. But if somebody's attacking me in a bar and I have to defend myself, that warrior part is going to come really handy. Unfortunately, what usually happens is when somebody makes a joke, the warrior part comes out to fight them. When I'm in a bar and somebody attacks me, the scared part comes up and then I freeze. Right? It'll rarely be a good match unless you can be in your center and you can call on to the parts and then you guide the show. You're like the director of the play and you have all these actors available to you and you choose how to run the play. That's the idea. That's what we're trying to get to. The way we are naturally is the actors run the show, they do whatever they want, whenever they want, and then the play just goes nowhere useful.
Chaos at times.
Yes, it can be chaos. Yeah.
But this active participation sounds like quite a utopia, right? To truly be grounded in yourself. Sure, not all of the time. Again, we are humans, but as often as we can.
Yeah.
Wow, what a dream to call on these parts consciously.
Yeah, having more access, right? Having access to the parts, understand it. When they come up, they don't just take over. You notice them come up and you go, oh, there you are. What I share with people, a little tool is name the parts. When you have a repetitive part that comes up quite frequently for you, give it a name, figure out how old it is, really get to know it so that when it comes, you can say, oh, little Joe's visiting. Right, and it's just a visit, right? It's not you're not it. You're not the angry person. You're not the depressed person. You're not the shamed person. That is not who you are. That is just a part that comes to visit. I was working with a Burmese guy here. He was in a relationship with a Phalang, a Western person, and so his English was not so great. So I was trying to explain this to him, and so I was talking about P. P is ghost. In Thai, and I guess he spoke enough Thai, and so I said, you have these ghosts that come and visit you sometimes, and so when you get really angry and jealous, it's not you, it's just a ghost that comes, and so you just have to work with the ghost. And so that really resonated with him, right? He could really understand that concept.
Yeah, like hungry ghost, right?
The
similar?
Hungry ghost, it's similar. This was just, I named the ghost apart, but the hungry ghost in Buddhism is when we're so wounded that the wound can never be filled enough. So if I have a wound around respect, it doesn't matter how much respect I get, right? I could become president of the United States.
Band-aid.
Yes, exactly. It's never, so you can never, food, love, drugs, whatever it is, you keep putting it in there and it's never enough. You always want more. And that's the hungry ghost.
Wow.
So when I talk about wounded needs, I have this little imaginary scale from 0 to 100, right? And so 20 is when we're born and we're in the perfect little garden and everything's fine. All our needs are at about a 20. The need for food, the need for love, for appreciation, for inspiration, it's all at about a 20. Right? That's what you need to survive in this world, is to be fed this much love, appreciation, everything. But as we get wounded, or our culture is different, or conditioning happens, some of us will go from 20 down to 10 or 0, where we have no needs. We freeze our needs. We end up learning that, personally I learned that my needs weren't going to get met, so there was no point having any. Right. And so then I just became self-reliant. And in that way I was never going to I was avoiding pain. Eventually as an adult, it turned out that wasn't a great strategy, because you need to be we're interdependent. So to just try to get all your needs met by yourself is not a realistic system and not even useful for connection and love and community. So I had to learn to depend on people, to be okay with people helping me, to not always have to be self-sufficient. One of the stories that I got from my men's group in my initiation, we have to do a whole process, and part of the process was to you're given a challenge, and I had many parts, and one of the part was, when I go see clients, I would go around, I was a computer guy at the time, and I would go to people's houses and offices and fix their computers. They would often offer me coffee or tea or water or whatever, and I always said, no, that's okay. I had my bottle, I don't need anything, right? I was okay. And somehow I mentioned that in this initiation process, and they said, okay, so your challenge is to say yes from now on. And I had to say, every time somebody offered me something, I had to say yes, and learn to have people meet my need. And it was also a gift for them. They wanted to give, and I kept blocking their gifts, because I didn't need it.
Yeah, you were self-reliant, designed to be self-reliant, when really your gift, your challenge in life was to actually receive and learn how to be cared for. I resonate with this big time. I'm hugely self-reliant, and a recovering self-reliant, because
Yes.
I too in my adult life have been really working on receiving and see that as an exchange. The other person wants to help, and
Exactly.
we are worthy of receiving, right? There's so many
Yes.
layers. Like, why are you self-reliant?
Yes.
Well, I'm not worthy of people's
Yes.
space and time, and then that layers into so many other aspects of like a lack of sense of self too, right? Like if I don't have needs, then I don't matter, etc.
Yeah, it all plays into all that whole thing. And, you know, it was my mom's gift to me. She wanted me to be independent.
Yes.
You know, and what she didn't realize is that she caused a lot of abandonment because she then left me to my own devices quite a bit, because she wasn't independent as a kid. She had no independence. And so she went completely the other way and gave it to me, which was an amazing gift in a way, but also then ended up with no needs.
Yeah. The pendulum swings.
It does.
Right?
Yeah.
We always want to offer what we didn't receive, but if we swing it to the other way, then we really miss that middle way.
Exactly. Let me get back to the needs chart. If we go below, we end up with freezing. If you go above, we become needy. So 30, 40, 50, your needs are on that scale from 20 to 100. Now, if you're above there, you're in the needy part. And we talk about needy as a bad thing usually, right? It's a negative connotation. But needy just means that you have a wounded need. And so on that, you know, maybe you're needy in your safety. Why? Because you weren't safe as a kid. And so now safety is so important to you. And so it's totally normal that you would have a wounded need around it. The problem is, if you're trying to get the world to meet that wounded need at that level that you have it, the world doesn't know how to do that. The world works at whatever their level is at. So if I have an 80 for a wounded need, which is close to addiction territory or hungry ghost territory, right? Because it's so high up there, it doesn't matter how much safety your partner gives you, you always want more. And so that's going to become an issue. And so understanding that, that's then where the NVC breaks down. Because if something happens and I have a need and I ask of you to do something to meet my need, but it's a wounded need, you're going to have a really hard time meeting it at the level that I need it met. And so to really begin to understand that, what are our wounded needs? What are those needs that we talk a lot about? You know, what are the words that you mention a lot? Safety, inspiration. That's usually not really one. It's going to be safety, appreciation, validation, to be seen, to be heard. Those are the wounded needs a lot of the time, to matter.
Yeah.
And so understanding what those are, then when we do NVC with people, or when we ask to get our needs met, if we can own it, this is a wounded need for me. So I know it's going to be hard for you, so what do we do about it?
Yeah.
You know,
So much internal track work. It's so valuable.
Yeah, so it's internal track. And so then how do we work with it, right? So recognizing that I'm triggered. So awareness. First step is awareness. Second step, as you said, is acceptance, right? Don't beat yourself up for getting angry again or shutting down again or feeling hurt or whatever it is. The third step for me is understanding, trying to figure out where that comes from. Connect the dots to your childhood, to your trauma, to whatever. The reason you get angry when somebody's late is why? Because you don't feel respected, which is not a feeling, but you don't think you're being respected. Why you feel hurt because you don't think you're being respected. Why? Why do you go to respect? Right? So maybe when you were a kid, there was not much respect for you. You were discarded a lot, or your views weren't important, or you didn't get a chance to talk, or whatever. And so you developed this idea that you need to get respect in the world. And so now you have a filter. You see everybody's actions, or most people's actions, through that lens of respect. Are they respecting me or not? And so you then make up stories about what they're doing just because of the result, but you don't know why they're doing what they're doing. If they're late, you have no idea if it has anything to do with respect. But that's how you filter it. So the more you can do the understanding part, which is shadow work, therapy, medicine journeys, there's so many different ways to begin to understand where all that comes from. If you get there, maybe you're not there yet, and it's going to take you a few more years to understand some of these triggers. But if you do, it helps. Because then at some point we realize, okay, they did this thing. I know it's my wound that I have disrespecting, so I know they're probably not trying to disrespect me. So maybe I can just regulate my system then.
Yeah.
It's not about continuing the reactivity. It's about how do I then start regulating. So if you have the understanding, great. If you don't, doesn't matter. Next step is regulating. Once you realize you got triggered, right? Oh, I got angry. Okay, how do I get out of it? So maybe I do some breaths. Maybe I take a walk. Maybe I do some tapping. There's lots of different techniques. I like to shake it out. Animals just shake it off, right? Any kind of stress. So I just like to just shake out my body just to kind of release whatever the tension is. Once I realize that I don't need to be in this reactivity anymore. And then, so releasing the energy, and then I can respond.
Yeah. After that pause, after that,
Yeah.
sitting with yourself, that too, like,
Yeah.
is a challenge. It can be a challenge for many, right? If our system is so attuned to just spiraling, and stress, it seems like it would be easy to go to a place of like calmness. But I remember when I was beginning to regulate my nervous system, it felt like there was like a sense of impending doom. Like it was so scary to sit in it and choose to breathe. And if you persist and consistently show up, of course it gets easier, thankfully. You know, and it's taken a long time and a continued journey of learning and showing up in that way. But even that is a big step.
It is. And we're very different, right? Everybody's different. There is no one way, you know, there's no cookie cutter method. You have to figure out what works for yourself. So we all have a different way to regulate. We have a different way to understand our reactivity. And so the idea is not to tell people, this is what you do. You know, it's like there's a menu and you have to figure yourself out in the menu. And with our partners or friends or family or whatever, we get to teach each other what we need. You know, because I learned when I was a kid was, you know, treat others the way you want to be treated. You know, it's a Jesus rule. You know, and it's a great way, actually, for kids, it's a great way to start because it's respectful. Don't treat anybody worse than you would want to be treated. Of course, that's a great thing. But it turns out that when I treated people the way I wanted to be treated, they didn't like it. You know, they couldn't, you know, like, why can't you take a joke? I can take a joke. Why can't you? Well, because they can't, right? Because it hurt them, because they had different wounding, different conditioning. And so certain things for them were way more painful than it would be for me. And so after losing a couple of friends and, you know, doing some workshops, I started realizing, wow, I use my humor in a way to elevate myself. This is a way for me to look smart, look, you know, more better, basically, to matter. You know, that is my big wounding, is to matter. Because I grew up small, younger than everybody, and so always fighting for attention and for relevance. And so once I realized that, I realized, oh wow, yeah, you can't treat people the way you want to be treated. You have to treat them the way they want to be treated, which means inquiring, figuring out what works for them, what doesn't work for them. And so once you realize that, what are their needs, and try to meet their needs. You know, we tend to give what we want to receive a lot, even in gift situations. You know, there's a system called the 5 love languages, right? And so the idea is that there's 5 ways that we give and receive love: gifts, words of affirmation, quality time, touch, acts of service, right? And so if you give, you know, we tend to give the one we want to receive the most. The one that matters the most to us, that fills us, is the one that we give the most to others. But if your partner is not the same, you keep giving them something that's nice but not really that relevant for them. They need to receive theirs, and if you don't give them theirs, they don't fill up their love tank. And then you end up with a flat relationship. And so it's really important to recognize that, like, what do they need? How do I give them what they need? I'm hearing a lot of like undertones even of not assuming, right? Like having big assumptions, missing the conversation. Like if I like this, everyone likes that. It's like, no, actually, what's so beautiful, I think, for like intimate relationships and like close friends, partnerships, that playing ground of really doing the dance of, I'm going to give everything that I know about myself so that we can get to know each other, and it's intimate and vulnerable. And so much opportunity for actually landing in what is, rather than dancing around this. You're creating like a cinematic orchestra of illusions almost, right? Like it's quite a contrast there. Well, so let's talk about illusions. Let's, please. So falling in love, right? Sure. What is falling in love, right? So my model for falling in love is that it's actually wound attraction. My soul attracts what it wants to heal. They also call it trauma bonding, but I like wound attraction. And so the idea is that, yeah, it's actually an illusion. When we fall in love with someone, it seems so amazing and so real, and they're the one, and blah, 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 blah. We create all these stories, but it's a total illusion. We know nothing about the person. You've just seen them across the way at a party, and you're just like, oh my God, and then you talk to them for 5 minutes, and you're like, you're the one. Like, yeah, right? How, where, from what? But it's this wound attraction. There's something in me that knows that I don't understand how that works. I still have no idea, but practically I see it happening all the time. There's something in you that will trigger my wounding, and I recognize that. And so I attract you, or I'm attracted to you for the wrong reason, of course, but it's because you're going to help me heal. You know, you're going to be an archetype for my father wound, my mother wound, my caretaker wounds, whatever it is, and you will be triggering things in me that will then allow me to work on them. Unfortunately, because most of us don't know this is happening, and I didn't know this was happening for many years, you keep entering relationships that trigger you, and then at the beginning it's beautiful, but then at some point the triggers start, and you don't understand why they're so mean to you. Why do they keep hurting you? You make me feel bad. You make me angry. You keep abandoning me. You keep ignoring me. You keep whatever. And so we end up breaking up. Most of us end up breaking. Most relationships break up. That's actually a good thing. The worst is when they don't just break up, but they hate each other.
Right.
Because they've gone too far in the toxicity of it, right? And if you really make me feel so bad about myself that I hate you for it, that's why we end up hating each other. And so many couples that have children and that have to co-parent for the rest of their lives actually hate each other. And it's really just because of the wounding. They're not bad people. Nobody's trying to be an asshole. It is just the wounding that has us do things that we don't understand, and that gets us in this reactivity.
Yeah.
So if you can do this from a conscious place, enter a relationship consciously, knowing that your wounding is going to get triggered, and I can see right away when I meet a woman now, I feel that wound attraction, I can see, and then I need to talk about it a bit to see what it's going to be, but I can see that it's going to trigger something in me. You know, for me, it's abandonment. It's going to be the main thing. And so I attract women that have a certain unavailable quality about them. It could be, and it doesn't have to be consistent. It's not always the same thing. But the last one was she would get angry sometimes, and when she got angry, she would go away. And the minute she got angry and went away, there was like, I don't know if mommy's coming back. That was my inner child, my wound. Like, oh, mommy's gone. I don't know if she's coming back. With time and working with it together and understanding that was the pattern, then we created a system where I knew that she would come back, and she would not just come back and maybe forgive me or whatever, but actually take responsibility and repair. So the last, I talked about responding to the situation. Afterwards, we want to repair. Because I may have done something, but she got angry and went away. Just as problematic as whatever I might have said. Maybe I made a joke, maybe I made a comment, who knows? Maybe I did nothing. Maybe she just filtered it, Often my partner would get mad and I go, oh, what is it? And he goes, no, I just had a thought about my mom. Something we talked about triggered something, and then she would get angry at her parents. But my wound was always like, oh, she's leaving me, right? That's the first thing that happens. I've learned to be with that now, so that when I feel, I just go, thank you, old friend. I know that wound now. In the past, I would react, get mad, get angry, would get in a fight. Once I've worked on it enough, now I know that when it happens, I just have to be patient, let her process, she'll come back. She'll not only apologize, but take responsibility for her anger, for running away. And then that's the reparenting that I never got. My mom didn't know she was abandoning me, so never once apologized for it. She did much later once we ended up unpacking all of this and figuring it out. But in the moment, in my childhood, there was no repair. So in our relationship now, we get to do that repair and then slowly do the reparenting that we never got.
And no repair, of course, because that's what caused the wounding, right? So yeah, it sounds like, thank you for sharing all of that. I mean, it sounds like we come into a relationship with another, if we get stuck in a spiral, we're cycling the same kind of stories, we're hurting each other, we're fighting. In those instances, sure, get out, right? But if you can see the work that needs to be done, that internal track, awakening, my own process, seeing your partner's process, having the courage, I think, really to express yourself, to take, I think, accountability too, right?
That's
like,
what it is.
Okay, I'm not perfect. Whoa. Like, what a statement. Of course I'm not. But to really own up to all of the processes that have contributed to pain and suffering and ongoing cyclical patterns. I think that is love, right? That is conscious love.
Yeah, to me, love is wanting the best for the other and wanting to help the other grow and thrive. That's love. It's not what's in it for me, And so when we fall in love, it's this beautiful thing, but it's basically like doing drugs, right? We get flooded with dopamine and all of that. So what I call it when I meet someone and I have that feeling, I won't say I love you for quite a while. I want to wait on that one and make sure, but I'll say I'm flooded. I feel so flooded right now. Like, wow, I just feel all this emotion, which feels like love. We've called it love. I don't know what it is. It's just, I just want you. I just want to meld with you. I want to merge with you. Right? It's this crazy thing. I also call it gooey and enthusiastic. But it's not, we don't know if it's going to be love yet, right? We don't know if we're going to actually really love each other. So the idea is, we get flooded, we go through it, honeymoon phase. At some point, the flood recedes, and we open our eyes and we go, oh, who are you? And that's when the relationship starts.
Absolutely.
Now you get to know each other. You get to see if you like each other. Because for sure you loved each other. Like, I love you, you're amazing. But you actually like the person. And I've had plenty of ex-partners that I don't really like that much. Personality-wise, we're not a good match. But it took a while to figure that out.
Yeah, for everything to fade.
To fade, yeah. And unfortunately, if you're not really seeing it from that lens, I got stuck in 2-3 year relationship that did not need to happen. But for whatever reason, I didn't know how to get out of them. I had my abandonment issues or whatever, and it took that long to realize that, I didn't like them that much. And so beginning to understand the difference, and so then you create a whole new kind of love, because if you do like each other, now it's going to be about values, about connection, about interests, about pacing, about energy. There's so many things that are needed for a good relationship that have nothing to do with why you fell in love. That was just an illusion. That was the attractant to get you to start the process.
I like this. Yeah, as a human, obviously I resonate, right? Like, it makes complete sense. And what a beautiful way to look at it. Do I like this person? And really sit with that. And if you like them, then there's love there, development. And I think you're ready to take that risk of showing your true self to that person through communication, through myself doing the work. And again, I keep coming back to accountability, right? Like, really owning up to, I did that, and that's due to this wound. And that's something that I'm actively working on, and I won't be perfect all the time, but I'm going to work on it. And I want to hear about your wounds.
Yeah, I still get triggered plenty. With my roommates, I get into situations. I'm like, rah, 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 and I walk out of there and I'm like, rah, rah, you, and then I take a pause at some point and I breathe and I go, okay, what's going on here? Why is this such a big thing for me? Of course they're doing what they're doing. The thing is that what we don't realize is that we all see the world through different lenses. So my roommates, they don't see the kitchen the way I see the kitchen, right? I walk in there and then I see a mess. They just walk in there and just see the thing they're looking for. They don't see these other things. And so then I keep going like, didn't you notice that there was ants in the thing and all of that and you didn't wipe it? And what's the matter with you? They just don't see it the same way. So me getting angry about it really doesn't serve, because they're not trying to be uncaring or
malicious. They're not malicious about it.
No, there's no malice in it at all. We just don't see the world the same way. We don't notice the same things. We track different things. They get really mad because the living room is not just, the way it is, and I leave my shoes somewhere, which is really not that important to me. But ants on the kitchen counter, that's important. We see different things.
Yeah.
And so the more we can understand that, it's this assumption you were talking about earlier. We assume so much about what the way, there's a should, right? So I talk about that when I teach, like, there's no should in the world. We keep shoulding on each other about you should do it this way or this is the way things should be. Not really. There's just could, maybe, would. I do them this way. You might want to try it. Maybe it works for you. Maybe it doesn't. But you shouldn't do this. You shouldn't go to the doctor because of that wound. It's just, I'm worried about that wound that you have. And if it was me, I would go to the doctor. You get to do what you do, and I would love to support you. Do you want my support with it? Asking for consent before engaging and telling people what to do and assuming what's good for them and all of that. Right, so
this is such a paradigm shift, Bernard, because even the concept, I remember once upon a time, whenever I really did believe that my lens is everyone else's lens, period, right? Like, this is, so I don't understand why they're not losing their mind over there whenever, similar to you, I walk into the kitchen, right? And there's mess here and, so love for me too, historically, I was like, I just need to find someone with the same lens. Right? So then I just don't have to be triggered. And like, it can have band-aids or keep it under control, under wraps. Like, what an illusion that is too. Right? It's like, I think my system, historically especially, thankfully, a lot of work, a lot of meeting this, a lot of exploration, a lot of therapy, a lot of etc. But, a trigger to me was just like, well, it's not going to work.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And what a sad reality that would be is, you're missing the opportunity for growth.
Exactly.
And development and connection.
Yeah. This is all about the more, everybody's our teacher.
Yeah.
Everybody's my teacher, and they teach me. Now, that doesn't mean I have to stay at that school forever.
Yeah.
I can take on a teacher, they teach me some things, I can see, okay, this is my stuff, okay, I work on it for a while, and then I go, that's still not my preference.
Yeah.
But now I can walk away from it. I'm not running away. To me, that's the difference. Am I running away from a situation because I can't handle it?
Yeah.
Or am I saying, yeah, I see it. I can see that even my wound is connected to this, but it's my preference to now not engage with this anymore. One of my triggers is loud people, loudness, because my dad was really loud and overbearing and conscious and to me embarrassing. And so that became a wound. And so loud people can be a challenge for me. But now I realize there's nothing wrong with them. When somebody's loud, I can just go, okay, this is a bit of a challenge. What can I do? How do I handle that? How do I manage my nervous system and not criticize and judge them? And then at some point I can choose, okay, I either don't want to engage with it anymore, but not because I'm just running away, because I can't handle it. It's more because it's not my preference and I'm going to choose to be with a different situation.
Yeah. Back to active participation, right? Agency. And by making these conscious choices, we are coming back to a sense of self that perhaps for many of us when we were younger didn't have a sense of self because we didn't know our needs. So it's quite a trajectory of development and getting to know ourselves and what we want and what we don't want and taking action in the direction that best suits us.
Yeah, somebody was asking me recently, what's the difference between a want and a need? Or how can you tell if it's a want or a need? And the way I look at it is, if you don't get your want, do you get upset? Or you just go, oh, okay, I wanted that, but I can't get it. Okay, I'll just go get something else. So I'll want something different then. I'll go to my second on the list, right? If I want Thai food and Thai food is closed, I'll just go to another restaurant. I don't get upset about it. But if it's a need, and especially a wounded need, and I don't get it met, I'm going to get reactive in some way. Whether it's up or down, it's hyperarousal where you actually get, fight or flight mode, or hypoarousal where you go down to freeze mode, whether you shut down or get angry, whichever one you do, it's still going to be a reaction. That's how you know that it's not just a want, right? There's some wounding associated with it.
Physiological changes, activation.
Yeah, and stories.
So many stories.
You start creating stories.
Yeah.
One of my big freedom moment in life was my counseling teacher in San Francisco said, it's all made up. And I went, what do you mean? It's all everything. It's all made up. And I was like, oh, wow. It's all made up. Of course, it is all made up. Right? There is no objective reality of anything. I mean, there may be some things that a tree is a tree. No, but a tree we made it a tree. We said it's a tree. What does that even mean? Right? Yes, there's a piece of wood there. Oh, but what's wood?
The more we unravel, the more we realize it started once upon a time with a story.
There's just, maybe I am. Maybe that's the truth behind everything. Like enlightenment is about peeling the layers of identity and realizing there is no identity. It's just a consciousness. And so, once you realize that it's all made up, you can begin to relax.
Exhale, right? Ooh, and it's quite a game. We're here to play, right? And if we can take it a bit less seriously. Rather.
Yes, exactly. Everything matters and nothing matters, right?
Those paradoxes,
It's a crazy paradox. And to be able to hold life with those paradoxes, that's freedom. Like when it matters, of course, you and I here right now, this matters. And we're going to have an impact on people and we're going to help people with their lives. And this matters. But, compared to the cosmos and everything, like this little speck we are, really not very important. Pretty soon, 2 billion years, the sun will explode, this planet won't be here, we won't be here. We really don't matter that much. And so to be able to see it from both sides and say, okay, this is important right now, and can I not take it so seriously?
Yeah, what a dance. What a dance to liberation.
It is.
Yeah, you're doing a lot of amazing work, Bernard. I know, we've talked a lot about NVC and the multiple layers here. I know you also do relationship coaching. Is there anything that you'd like to share along those lines? Like, who comes to you? Who wants your magic?
The smart ones, they come before there's a problem, right? early in a relationship, come and explore, because your wounding is going to get activated. Now, I don't mean, all these things that I'm talking about, like communication and wound attraction and NVC and all of that, those are models. I'm not saying any of this is the truth, right? It's just different ways of looking at
We've
the world.
identified earlier, it's all just a story.
Exactly.
And who made the story,
Exactly,
right? So,
and the fact that everything's made up is made up, right? I'm making that up as well, so it's circular. But so they're models to work with. So I'm not saying it's always like that. And it's not always wound attraction when you meet someone. You can choose a relationship where you actually meet someone that is really nice and is a good match for you, and there isn't the fireworks. And you're not, really high and really low and stuck in wounding. You just like each other, and you have a really nice, steady relationship. Some people choose that. It's not as juicy maybe in some ways, or as exciting, but it's much quieter, or much simpler, much nicer, calmer. In many ways, calmer. Mm-hmm. So you get, people choose the relationships that they want. Some people promote that, those types of relationships. I'm not telling you do one or the other, but in those relationships, there won't be a lot of healing, because you won't be triggering the wounding. So it'll be nice. It just won't be as maybe useful in terms of healing trauma, if that's what you're looking for. The other thing that I tell people is, know what kind of relationship you're looking for and you want. Do you want a play relationship? Do you want a growth relationship? Do you want just to have children? Do you want to have a business relationship where you work together? There's so many different ways to do relationships, but often we don't really explore it. So one of us wants play, one of us wants growth, and then we wonder why it's not working. She's always wanting to go party, and I want to go meditate, or the opposite, right?
Incongruence there.
Yeah,
sure.
Incongruent. So knowing that, so early on in a relationship, there's so much to explore, to figure out, okay, why are we here? And that can be your big question, right? Why are we here? Mm-hmm. Why are we here in this relationship? Why are we here on the planet? That's kind of an important thing to notice.
Big time.
The simple one is, do we want children? That's always, where people will don't even ask that question, and then that'll be a big thing, because one does, one's not sure, whatever. But there's so much more that to ask. So those are the lucky ones who do the process early. Other people come when they have issues, and then my job is to begin to help them see the wounding, because usually that's the problem, is they don't know how to communicate. So NVC is really useful, or conscious communication, and then taking responsibility, learning that, there's a whole other way to look at this, right? It's not them doing something to me, it's my wound getting triggered. So if they can begin to understand that and shift their mindset, now there's something to work with. So you have to be willing to do this work, to really take it on and realize, wow, even if it's not easy to do, you still get it, that it's my wound is my wound, and you're not doing anything to me. Mm-hmm. And then, can I do the work? Because it's one thing to be willing, you have to be able. Some people are so raw in their trauma still, or so early on the development stage, that no matter what happens, they know they're supposed to take responsibility or whatever, they just keep reacting. And then it triggers the other's reaction, and then they react, and they just keep re-traumatizing each other. That's not helpful.
Painful, so much harm.
It's painful, it's hurtful, it's re-traumatizing. So with those couples, I will recommend uncoupling. Do some conscious uncoupling before you hate each other. While you could actually be really good friends. You're just not at the place to be lovers, because the wounding is too triggering, too polarized. So, but if you're able to do the work, then it's magical, right? Then you grow together.
You're going deep.
You're
giving
deep.
your everything, right? Your stories, your honesty, your heart,
and you're being held. Somebody is holding that for you, and you hold it for them. Hopefully it's balanced. Some couples are a little more or less balanced depending on their development, but if they're both willing, it's an amazing journey to go on. And then it doesn't mean it's going to be on forever. Then you're going to begin to see how compatible you are. I just had a 4.5-year relationship that was an amazing relationship, but what we learned over time was that we weren't so compatible. We love each other deeply. We're compatible on many levels, but energetically, introvert, extrovert, socially, all of that. And so that became too much of an obstacle, to continue to thrive together. And so then we realized, okay, and then it's better let's stay friends, and continue the journey, and continue to support each other, and be family for each other.
Yes.
I see so many couples with kids and all that, and they create these beautiful extended families where there's the new kids and the old kids and the half kids and the stepbrothers and all of that, and they meet for Thanksgiving, and and there's all these different ex-husbands and all. It's amazing, people that are able to do that. Yeah, because they're doing the work, and now they see each other as companion on the journey. They don't have to stay lovers.
They develop so much intimacy in relationship, right? And to just kind of throw that away, wow.
It's crazy.
Wow. Yeah, I'm dear friends, thankfully, with my exes, and I really appreciate, that bond, that support, that love, that sense of family, and a deep unconditional love. It took time, right? And development and pain and ups and downs to get there, but it's really beautiful if that's something that you're interested in doing, and it, for me, leaves more love in my heart personally, because I think what I keep hearing about all the discussions that we're having here, it's like suffering is inevitable. We'll have challenges in life, but that double suffering, are we going to extend, am I going to be angry and choose to be angry at a situation, then I'm suffering further? Or am I going to be resentful to an ex? Am I going to hold that within my system for the next year, for the next 10 years? Who's suffering then? It is me. And that's heavy.
It is.
For someone that believes deeply in energetics, to hold on to that consciously or unconsciously, it's too much.
It is. Another example of that was in a men's weekend, the Sterling Men's Weekend. It was a famous men's weekend in America. And in the middle of the night, we're all sleep deprived. He's up there on stage and he says, "Men, you have to forgive your fathers." And we're like, "What do you mean? I don't want to forgive my dad." So many people have issues with their dad. And so it's like, no, my dad's an asshole. I'm not forgiving him. And so we all, blah, blah, blah. But then he says, you're not doing it for them. You're doing it for you. You want to release that baggage that you're carrying. Because if you don't, you're going to carry that hatred, that baggage with you for the rest of your life.
And it's heavy.
It's a heavy baggage. And so at the time I was like, we had to go to the mic and do this forgiveness thing, and the stories that people told about abuse, about sexual abuse, about trauma, about whatever, it was like, it was horrendous. I don't remember what I said in the mic that day. I don't know how much I forgave or not, but a seed was planted, that this was something. And over time, I began to understand my father more as I did my own growth and continued to do these workshops and understood psychology and saw why he was the way he was. He's a child of the Holocaust. He was hidden. All the movies you see, he's that kid that hidden during the war, to save him from the war, basically.
Wow.
And he survived, but his mother didn't. His mother died in Auschwitz. And so then he comes out of the war. He's 6 years old and no more mother. So you can imagine the trauma. I mean, it's uneven fathomable, to even begin to try to understand that. And so in the fear and the terror that he probably went through, and then the sadness and the hurt. And so, of course, he figured out a way to fix his psychology, to protect himself. And there was no psychologist then. Nobody worked with him. He never got to see a therapist in his life, probably.
Yeah.
And so here I come trying to, help him grow. And I show up with him and I give him a book and I say, "Read this book, The Road Less Traveled." It was my first, my seminal book. And so I was like, "Dad, this is amazing. Read this." And he was like, "No, thank you, but no, I don't want to go there." And so with time, I began to realize, and I had this big epiphany in a workshop, that, I can love him. I don't have to like him. Again, the difference between love and like, right? I don't have to like his actions. I don't have to like his personality, the things that he does, but he's still my dad and I can love him. I wouldn't be here without him.
Yeah.
And so when I got to Chiang Mai, I found a storytelling workshop. And so I told the story. I wrote the story and told the story of my journey from hate to love with my dad, ode to my father, journey from hate to love. And to be able to realize, it was about me. It wasn't about him, and now I have love in my heart for him. I have no hatred. I don't carry any resentment anymore. He's also passed away, which makes it a lot easier because I don't have to like him, on a day-to-day basis. But I think of him fondly, and I think of him, and I share things in my head with him, and so I have this love connection with him. I don't carry this big burden of hatred. And so same with former partners. I'm friends with most of my partners. There's a few that carry resentment towards me, and I'm waiting for them to get that epiphany one day and go, "Oh, this was my shit," right? And they'll come and maybe apologize because yes, of course we made mistakes, but I wasn't a bad partner. I think actually I was a great partner, but they just were lost in their trauma, and so now they're still in their pain. And so, yeah, that's the hope, that we can all continue to love each other, even if we're not in like or in relationship anymore.
Right. And remembering too, like, what keeps coming up for me now is compassion, right? Like, if we were dealt the same cards, like if you were dealt the cards of your father, you would have unfolded in the exact same way.
Exactly.
A lack of resources, it's easy to, again, to come from our lens and place judgment, but if we can step back, have that pause to respond a bit more appropriately, and in an ideal world, sure, even create some repair if it's possible, but remembering people's capacities, right? You handed him that marvelous book, M. Scott Peck, love him.
Yeah.
Handing him the book, and it can be received or it can't, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Right? We have to kind of come to terms rather than having expectations, and if they're not met, what happens?
Exactly.
I'm angry. I'm disappointed.
Yeah.
I'm sad. Yeah, it's a lot of work, but it's beautiful. And I really appreciate the connection to freedom, inner freedom.
That's what it is, right? In the end, that's what it's about, right? It's not about right and wrong. It's not the right way to do things, or should be this way or that way. No, I just want to be more free. I want my life to be easier. That's really all it is. And that's been the beauty of my journey. Is my life is so much easier now than it ever was. So yes, I get triggered still. Yes, things happen, but I catch them. I can repair them. I can reconnect. I can make better decisions. All of that is so much easier than it was. And so that's what I want to help couples with. They get stuck in these stories. I mean, the stories that I see, and be able to peer behind the curtain of what's really going on in a relationship, it's tragic. And so to be able to give them tools, first of all, understanding, and then tools on how to manage this, and communication tools, all of that can completely transform a relationship. And with some of them, it's not much. Like just understanding NVC just changes everything. Some of them, there's a lot of wounding that needs to be worked on, and so it's a longer journey. But it can make wonders for relationships to begin to understand all of this. Yeah,
absolutely. And thank you for your time. I mean, it's been an absolute pleasure to delve into these topics. Something before you go, I'm imagining, okay, there's couples, they're in a cycle, a recurrent cycle, they're causing harm, they don't want to be, of course. You've already offered a lot of tips and tools and stuff, but if you could point people in the direction that there is a willingness there, and like to see if they're able, what would be some recommendations for?
Well, so for sure, couples therapy is going to be really important. So there's two ways that we're going to heal, right? We're going to heal on our own, doing therapy, especially somatic therapies, Hakomi, somatic experiencing, things with the body. Talk therapy is amazing. It's a great way. It really helped me a lot when I started, but it's great for understanding. It doesn't really provide the healing. It's just more of a maintenance kind of a thing that happens with talk therapy. Other therapies is where you can get the healing going. So you want to do that. So for some couples, it's like each one has to do their work individually. But then we want to do the work together, because a lot of the wounding is relational wounding. And so then you heal that in relationship to others. And so then doing couples therapy will be really useful. And so the way I work with couples, I always start with, I meet each one individually first. Because when I did couples therapy years ago, we went in together. And then you're not really telling everything because they're there. And so you're probably holding back, or one is overbearing to the other or influencing the other. So by meeting them individually, I get the whole story. And I may even get things they say, please don't tell them that. And so I won't bring that up in the couples therapy, but I know the context. And I know then what to work with. And I see the wounding. And it's kind of funny that usually the first one I see, I believe their whole story, and I think, wow, the other one's really messed up, And then I talk to the other one and I go, oh, wait a minute, the way they're describing it is only half the story. There's more to it than that. And then I hear the whole other story, which is great. So then I can really see what's happening. And then I put them together, and then together we start then working on, okay, I describe what I see, what the wounding is, how it's affecting them, how they can begin to take responsibility. And so that'll be the way to work with it, to give them tools, give them code words, give them strategies, check with each other. It's like, when you get angry, how do I let you know that I see you angry? What could I say that will help you in that moment? Instead of saying, please calm down.
Not so helpful.
Not so helpful, right? That you need to, but only the person can figure it out. And maybe they don't even know. It's going to take trial and error. Yeah, when I'm angry, I don't know. What could you do? What will bring me down? I have no idea. Okay, try, come down. And then if that doesn't work, try ouch. Ouch is my big code word. It's my favorite code word. Just say ouch.
Yeah. Tender egg is mine. I'm a tender egg right now.
Egg. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that lets them know that something is off.
Mm-hmm.
Please do not lecture them.
Yeah.
Don't tell them why what they're doing is wrong and how it's wrong and all of that. That will not be helpful. They don't even need that. They probably know. They just need a reminder.
Yeah.
You know, if they're raising their voice and getting activated, you say ouch, they go, oh, why are you saying ouch? Oh, am I loud? Oh, I guess I'm a little loud right now. Okay, give me a minute. Right.
It's validation, seeing you.
Yeah, it's being seen. It's just that. It's just being seen, letting them know that something's off.
Yeah.
And then hopefully you have a context. And so part of it is, in relationship, we create a context. That's what's really important. That we know what our wounding is. We know our fights. We know what's going to get us. We have a plan. So when it happens, we can get out of it quicker. You can't completely avoid it. Some couples might eventually, but you'll be able to get out of it quicker because you've got these code words, you've got these strategies. Maybe you take a pause. One of us says, hey, I think it's time for a pause. And then you say, okay, let's take the pause. We have a context for that. We're going to go away for 10 minutes and then we'll come back. And when you pause, what's really important, what I've learned that's really important, is not to just go away and sit on a stool and stew on it for an hour and then come back and continue
raging.
the same fact.
Come back raging.
Exactly, it's the same, right? You go away and you do something else.
Yeah.
You work on your project, you cook, you get your mind activated with something else so that it lets go of that trigger. And when you come back, you can now respond to the situation. And you can say, okay, what just happened there? What was that about?
Yeah.
And then doing debriefs after triggers, after issues or whatever, the next day when things are calm, debrief it. What happened? What was going on for you? What was going on for me? What was the reactivity? What was the wound? And now we learn about each other and then we help with the strategizing.
And so this debrief is a form of repair in a way because you're taking intentional time together to get to know each other. And
yeah, it's part of the repair. There's a thing I like to call clearing the field. Right, there's a field between us, an energetic field, and every time something happens, maybe you leave the light on, and I notice it, and then I turn it off, but I don't say anything. A weed grows in the field, and every time there's another weed, and then you have a field full of weeds because you think it's not a big deal, right? Yeah. But it becomes a big deal 2 weeks later when you have a fight about something. The whole field comes along. And so having a setup in your relationship where you clear your field regularly, where you don't let any little thing, like any of them, it doesn't mean you nag, you don't say, hey, you left the light on, but at some point when you're hanging out, you say, hey, do you want to clear the field, anything in the field? And you say, sure, that's a good time, let's do it now. And so, yeah, anything for you in the last week that's been coming up. And you say, well, actually, yeah, you did leave the light on the other day and I turned it off. And you go, oh, okay, cool, sorry, you're right, I probably forgot. Right? Not blame, just to clear
stating
it.
facts from my lens to your lens.
And you just get to clear these things that otherwise would be ruminating in your head that you're never going to say.
Yeah.
One of the ways I realized this was I was in an argument with Lexi at the time, and we were talking about something, and so okay, I said, I'm going to take a walk. And I went and took a walk, and during the walk I was totally ruminating on the thing we were just going about, and I realized, oh wow, I said, I haven't done this in so long because I don't normally ruminate anymore because we clear our field regularly. And here I knew it, and when I came back we would clear it. But the fact that, I don't spend most of my time on my scooter driving thinking about all these things that are going on that are not okay in the relationship.
Freedom.
Yeah. So having a system, whether you do it like weekly at 12 o'clock is our clearing time, or it becomes part of your culture where you naturally do it, or that's your pillow talk in the morning, hey, anything in the field, whatever your version of that is, but to just keep it clear.
Absolutely. I love this term, something that my partner and I have been doing, which has been beautiful, is like magical maintenance Mondays.
Great.
So just checking in. How are you? Where are you? What have been your observations? Like, are you satisfied? Again, like sexually, emotionally, mentally, physically, etc. Checking in.
Yes.
But this metaphor of the field is very powerful because, weeds grow. And when they're unobserved, they will just keep growing and growing and more. So I really appreciate that. It's helpful.
I like that. M&M's.
You got it. It's been a beautiful introduction.
Another thing that's important for couples is to don't fix the wrong thing.
Wrong.
I know, not that it's right or wrong, but don't fix something that's not going to be useful for your relationship. So I have a couple, they had, sexually after 5 years, there was not much going on. They were just not a great match sexually for whatever reason. And so they just decided, okay, well, our sex is not great. Why don't we open up the relationship? And then we can have sex outside of the relationship. And so they did that. And then, of course, at some point, you know, it was one of them didn't really want to do it, and then she really wanted to do it, and so they did it. And then he reluctantly did it, and then reluctantly fell in love with someone. And then that brought up a whole new can of worm, and so now they had to deal with all of that. And then they found me, and then we started doing some therapy. And so what we realized is that they fixed the wrong problem, or again, wrong. They fixed, you know, it wasn't about the issue wasn't that they needed to do something with the sex part. They needed to get to underneath it, figure out what was the cause of the sexual dysfunction, of the lack of polarity. And the cause was that he had basically emasculated himself in the relationship. And he was a nice guy. He went for the nice guy syndrome. He would let her agree to whatever she wanted. He would put his needs aside. It was all about, and she was a little more dominating, so she was more clear about what she wanted, and so they would do what she wanted. He didn't really do what he wanted. He repeated back a pattern that he either observed or did with his mother. And so there goes the polarity, there goes the attraction, there goes the electricity. And so that's what needed to be addressed. Going and opening up the relationship was not, it was a Band-Aid.
Yeah, and then he became some powerhouse masculine being to a woman.
Yes.
That then ignited a new polarity,
exactly,
right?
Exactly. And so now we're trying to, you know, figure out how to deal with all of that, right? So now they're working on it, and we'll see where it goes. It may be too late, it may not. We don't know yet. But so that's the idea, that we often fix the wrong problem, or not the issue that's really the issue. We don't look underneath it. And so that's really important, to identify, you know, what's the cause of what's happening, instead of just putting a Band-Aid on it.
Right, which may be helpful with someone like you,
Yes.
a therapist,
Yes.
you know, a third eye,
Yes.
really.
Yeah, because no matter how much work you've done, you know, if you're trying to therapize your partner, they don't want to hear it from you.
Yeah.
Because, unless you're perfect. But if you're not perfect, why are you telling me what I'm doing wrong? What about your stuff? And then they don't want to hear it. But me as a therapist, and I tell them the exact same thing, they can hear it from me.
Yes, it can sink in, permeate.
It can sink in, yeah, and they're not judging me back.
Yeah.
They're just hearing it, right? When it's you, or your partner, then right away you judge them back.
Yeah.
And so you're not really listening, because you've got your own issues with them.
Yeah.
So if they were coming from a place of, hey, here's my internal track, you know, I'm working on it, you know, what's going on with you, and then we can do that work together.
Yeah.
But then I'm not judging you, telling you what's wrong with you. I'm working on me and role modeling it for you, and inviting you into my world.
Right, going deeper and deeper.
Yeah, you know, one of the things that I'll share is, when you make a request in NVC, right, the idea is not to tell people what to do, you know, how to fix the problem for you. The idea is to invite them to come up with a solution that works for you, but that they came up with. They're empowered. So you're inviting them into your world, and you're inviting them to support you. So by bringing curiosity to why they do what they do, and then asking for collaboration, saying, hey, how do we solve this problem? Yes, you're late. It's okay, you're late. How do we solve it? Because I don't want to sit here every day for 30 minutes. So I would like for us to find a way to solve this. But can you come up with a solution? Instead of me telling you what to do. So
Activating a voice.
Yeah, you empower people, right? You empower them, and you invite them into your world. Very different than telling people what to do, solving their problems, all of that.
Yeah, because over the long term, emasculation or silence, or a lack of sense of self, or indifference, I imagine, ambivalence. Wow.
Yeah.
And no one's happy in that state, right? There's no freedom there. There's no sense of self, you know? Wow.
Yeah, I think that the Gottmans, they talk about contempt. It's like the worst thing that happens in a relationship, is when you start having contempt for your partner. That is not a good place.
Dangerous.
And that's because you start judging them. You just, you know, and you haven't done that work. You haven't opened up. You haven't freed yourself. And so, once you get there, it's really hard to get out of that.
Right. Yeah. Wow. Bernard, incredible. It's been magical to speak with you here today. We're coming to a close. You've shared a lot, and I thank you for that. If you could leave our listeners with one final thought, idea, or a message, what would that be?
Well, I talked about your wound is your gift, but the first part of that is, a teacher once told me, you will never heal your wound, but your wound is your gift. And so this idea that we want to heal is great, right? And maybe, and we do heal. There's no there. there's not one day when I'm finally, that was my thing. When am I going to stop crying? When am I going to stop, having this little boy crying in me all the time? And my facilitator in my men's group looked at me one day and he said, and I was saying this, like, when am I going to stop crying? When am I going to be healed? And he said, when I see you cry, what I see is a heart massage. And when he said that, it was like reframe, like, wow, yes, of course it's a heart massage. It's great. And now I love my tears, right? It's totally great. When I cry, I'm human, I'm humble, I role model, all of that, right? There's so much gift into it. So the idea is not to worry so much about, am I ever going to be healed? Is I'm on a healing journey. It gets easier. And along the way, I can help others on that journey.
Thank you. Thank you. Maybe all remember that. And forget it and come back.
Yes, exactly.
The humans that we are. Hey, Bernard, where can people find you?
I'm in Koh Phangan. I live here, so I do workshops here. I do a weekly class. I do a practice group where people can come and practice NVC. And the weekly class is a 2-hour class to learn everything we've talked about here today, but in a little more detail. It's more structured. It's a life-changing class. It's a paradigm-shifting 2 hours that really people come out of it going, oh my God, if you enjoy this talk, you will enjoy that class if you're here. And it's a requirement to then come and practice with us. And so we have a bit of it's a group therapy, NVC practice group where we meet once a week and practice. And then I do private sessions both here on the island in person and online with couples, with individuals. I also do mediation for families, businesses, friends, solving communication issues, which often derive from the wounding, which then, most problems, most misunderstandings or most fights are about a misunderstanding of needs. It is not about the laundry. It is not about the dishes, right? It's about a need for connection, a need for support, a need for appreciation. And if you can figure out what that need is, then we're talking about needs and we're not arguing the right and wrongness of how to do things. And so helping people see that and then work with that is part of that inner freedom.
Yeah. Sign me up. What a gift, indeed. Bernard, I couldn't recommend you enough, and I'm so grateful that you are doing online, because I know a lot of the listeners may not be in Koh Phangan, and really would absolutely encourage them to come your way if they're having any difficulty, and couples, but also just relationships in general.
And also work with people on their own journey of healing and understanding their wounding. I'm not a trauma therapist, but I will help you figure out what's going on. And then if you need trauma therapists, then we'll send you to some of the specialists that we have here on the island or other places in the world.
Let's ignite that paradigm shift. Yes,
exactly.
A whole new world. Bernard, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Sarah. It's been a pleasure.
That's it for today. Thank you for listening. I truly hope that today's conversation was valuable to you. To learn more about today's guests, including links and resources related to everything discussed today, visit the episode page at soulplaycollective.com. I'm so grateful you're here, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on the show. So don't be shy. Send in your comments and let us know how each episode is resonating with you. If you'd like to support the podcast, the easiest and most impactful thing you can do is to subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on YouTube, and leave a review and/or comment. Sharing the show or your favorite episodes with friends or on social media is fantastic and super appreciated. And finally, for podcast updates, please follow us on Instagram at soulplay.collective and at Soulplay Collective on Facebook and YouTube. Appreciate the love and support. See you back here soon.